Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of People Who Inspire. It's always exciting to have these discussions with people I deem to be on the right path and their lives will serve as an inspiration. Hello, Bismark, how are you?
Hello, Prince.
How was your weekend?
The weekend is going pretty well, and yours?
Oh, I'm doing going so well. It's been quite a busy week for me, but yeah, I always look forward to having these sessions with people like you. So happy to have you on People Who Inspire.
Pleasure to be on your program.
Awesome. So for those of you who are watching, today we are going to look at a very important topic. And if you're watching me for the first time, this is the People Who Inspire platform, or PWI for short. And what I try to do every weekend is to bring people whose journeys can serve as blueprints of inspiration for each one of you watching. And I'm sure that, Bismark or Dr. Appiah, his journey, I don't know his full journey, but he's going to share some bit of what he's had to, the hurdles he's had to overcome to get to where he is today. And we'll delve into the topic of, genomics and all those technical topics. And what for me is important is that I've worked in the pharmaceutical supply chain space for some time. And the whole idea of Africa being, let's say, usually thought of as the last destination for all these breakthroughs, I think that has to change. So Bismark will help us, kind of look at all the challenges and all the opportunities that is in this space. So yeah, happy to have you here. Maybe I'll start with the first question, if you don't mind. I looked at your profile, and for me, anyone who has a PhD, it's a big deal to me. How was it like? Let's start from the PhD and then we'll work backwards. How was it like getting to the PhD? How did you feel when you got accepted, and how was the whole journey like?
Oh, that's a very interesting part to start with, actually. So this is a bit personal. I will start with something personal. So
yeah,
towards the end of my master's program in Germany, I had to decide whether to go back to Ghana or to stay in Germany. And I had two options, either to find a job in my field or to go on to a PhD program. So once I realized that was a problem, I went straight at it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
I went straight at it and managed to secure that PhD position even before my my master's was completed.
Oh wow!
Once I saw this was the problem, I applied to a couple of programs. I had the option to go to Berlin at the Max 𝗕𝗶𝘀𝗺 Center, or to Freiburg, but ultimately I decided to come to Freiburg because the program they gave me had a data analytics component. So I was going to do a PhD in neurobiology and epigenetics, but I also would get some training in next generation sequencing, data acquisition and analysis. So, yeah.
Like, the reason why, I remember when I first reached out to you on LinkedIn, what excited me was, when from where I'm coming from, we kind of do data analytics, but in the business sense, right? We're also looking at sales data or trends, but you are doing like data analytics in genetics. So is that like, is my understanding correct? Because I was trying to understand like what data are you analyzing at that level,
Yeah, I think data analytics applies to every field. All of us generate data in some form, and we want to generate meaningful insights out of it. In the case of biologists and medical scientists, we want to gain new biological insights or new ways to treat diseases, right? And so for in my case, we want to understand the brain, and since I focus on how we build the brain during my PhD.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so we look at how the instructions that inform how the brains are built, how the brain is
Wow.
built, um, is is uh, is uh, is translated at the level of the single cell, and so
Oh.
we analyze data from single cells from the brain, and this can apply to both biological contexts as well as also for drug development when you are testing drugs
Oh.
on brain cells and then checking how does it affect the gene expression, so the information that instructs the brain, you know.
And this, I'm already excited, but that is not my field of study. But I want us to then look at, because when like looking at the kind of research you're doing, your PhD and everything, my general guess would be in Ghana would tell me as you are like this shark, who, has always had straight A's and all that. So can you tell me or tell the viewers, how you grew up, right? Like, just walk us through your primary GSS, SS, and it's my guess, right? Like you're, probably the shark of the class most of the time because this wild research you're doing.
I was terrible in class, actually.
What? No, no way.
So bad that my mom had to change my school, and that was basically what also changed the story a bit, because I was always the last in class, and my mom didn't understand
What?
why. Yeah. She didn't understand why, because at home I sounded like a very smart guy, and in class I was terrible. And uh, she thought maybe it could be, the style of the education, so she changed my school, and this changed the story. So I come from Ghana, and I grew up entirely in Ghana. Went up to my bachelor's degree in Ghana. Where I come from in Ghana is in the central region. So if you've heard of Cape Coast, yeah, in that region, but the exact location is not on the map.
Oh, oh.
In some bush somewhere in the central region. But my parents decided that we had to go to school. They thought education was better for us rather than staying in the village. So they moved to Kaswa. I don't know if you've heard of Kaswa.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm, mm.
on the outskirts of Accra,
Yeah.
capital of Ghana. And that's where we studied and grew up. And then from there, I went on to Pope John's seminary. I
Oh,
wanted
yeah,
to become,
Pojoba.
yes, I wanted to
Oh,
become a priest, but failed.
oh.
To
You'd
the
have been
delight,
called Father Bismark Appiah by now.
to the delight of my mother. I was very happy. And then from there, I moved to Germany. So
Oh,
I understood that for what I wanted to do, I needed to go out there and to see what's out there, see what other people are doing, and to gain some expertise, and then I could then apply this back home. Yeah.
no, I think what fascinates me is maybe I'd like to maybe get back on what you mentioned earlier, the fact that it seemed as though you were last in class all the time, and your mom said, okay, look, let me change the schools, and then the narrative changed, right? So can you maybe, I mean, I'm sure you've had time to reflect, right? What was it with the new school as compared to the old school that you thought brought that difference?
Mm. Yes. So in the old school, there was this, it was a public school, and there was this standard of education. The teachers had to follow a certain guideline and whatever. In the new school, what is interesting about it is that we didn't even have a professional teacher, but this teacher was emotionally intelligent. He
Oh,
understood He understood where I was coming from, gave me extra classes, took time to bring me to the point of the other students. And then he realized I was actually sharp. I was a bit, I used to question things instead of just taking things in and writing.
Oh,
Yeah. Since I wasn't writing the answer, I was getting everything wrong.
oh, okay, okay. Wow,
So
wow,
I think from the second term after moving to the new school, I was top of the class throughout.
wow. That's really amazing. I mean, this is a very important point. I think most of my guests always try to allude to this fact that, sometimes the method of delivering the content is as important as the quality of the content itself, right? So I think, and
Exactly.
for the schools that I've been to, I realized that I like you, I schooled, I did all my education in Ghana. Even my master's was in Ghana. So all my education has been in Ghana. And one of the things that I discovered later in life was that the our educational system in Ghana focuses on the content, the quality of the content. So you realize that what we are studying is not, the content itself is not really different from what is being studied elsewhere, but the method or the methodology or the pedagogy or however the academics call it, really I think is what makes the difference, because I think children assimilate information differently. Right. So I think this teacher really, really understood their job, although they were not trained professional teachers. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And this brings also a bit of some cultural
Mm,
aspects into this, because I mean, from where I was raised, it was unheard of for children to question adults.
yeah.
As a child, you have to respect. You have to respect your elders. What they tell you, you take it in, and that's it. But in my home, we were allowed to question things. So I
Okay.
had it right from the beginning, and I was questioning everything, and took the same thing to university, actually, questioning my professor in pharmaceutical chemistry, why a certain experiment couldn't be done the other way.
Oh, okay.
And this caused a whole problem.
Wow. 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 And so, like, so after Pope John's, I assume that did you go to Legon Tech, UCC? Which university did you, and what did you study?
After Pope John's, I did something completely crazy.
Okay.
Was, as I come from southern Ghana, and usually the southerners want to stay in the rich south and do
Yes.
university education. I decided to go to the north, to northern Ghana.
Oh, wow.
So I remember when I went to my uncle and said, "Well, I'm going to this university." He was like, "Are you crazy?" And
Wow.
somebody from my family uh, came to visit me throughout my entire study.
What?
I was up north for 4 years. On my graduation day, I had only my mother coming. I mean, I don't call them. I mean, it's like 24 hours away when you drive. No,
Wow.
drive away,
Wow.
24 hours away. So it's really difficult to get to visit. Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
University for Development Studies, because when I read into how university education is in Ghana, University of Development Studies in Ghana actually trained you to think about society, not just your field, what you're studying, but it trained you also to think about society and how you can bring change. And this attracted me so much that
Wow.
I opted to go there, and I've never regretted that, because I learned a great deal from there. First year and second year, they already took us in groups of 12 from different faculties to remote villages. This is your problem.
Oh,
You have to
wow.
you have to come together as 12 people from different backgrounds, sit together, come up with a profile of the community and develop it. And and
Wow.
and this was amazing. Yeah, I've
That's
never
like
been to.
really practical, way of
Yes,
teaching. Wow.
yes, it
That,
is
that's
problem based.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like, so what did you study? Did you study what program or what course did you study in UDS?
At UDS, I studied biochemistry, and I majored in clinical biochemistry.
Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's so while
Yeah.
some of us were running away from chemistry, some of you were embracing it at the highest level.
I mean,
Oh, that's
organic chemistry was, it wasn't so much fun. I love organic chemistry, so this is why I went in the direction of
oh,
biochemistry.
okay, okay. So you mentioned that like growing up, your mom changed your school. I just want to like ask this question and just to get your thoughts on like who was your major inspiration up until you got into the university? Because I feel that your mom is quite special because even like you say your graduation, she was the only one who came. So would you say she was the biggest influence or inspiration at that time, or did you have other mentors or other people who inspired you?
I would say I agree with you. It's my mom, and it's interesting because from my mom's from my ethnicity in Ghana, we are matrilineal in heritage,
Oh, okay.
and the women have to play a major role in a child's life, But I think my mom took it to the next level because she herself came from a background where she had nothing. She never stepped a day in class. But today she's able to talk to my wife in English.
Wow.
Yeah. No, that's the kind of mindset she had. And from the beginning, I mean, for example, I was born with two fingers on my left. And from the day
Oh,
one, my mom started training me so that I can use my hand for anything. I can do anything anyone else can do. And
wow.
fast forward, when I came to Germany, I was doing what do you call it? This microsurgery,
Oh,
hol- holding really sensitive lesions
yeah.
and doing it. And there were actually things that I could do that if I were not in the lab on that day, they would have to call me to come to the lab to do it.
Oh, wow.
And this all started because of the vision my mom had at when I was just barely age 8. Um, to look, to look ahead. Um, it- she trained me not to look at what I have now when I want to complete a project. Normally you want to do a project, you want to have everything in place. She trained me to look ahead, and yeah, just organize things in a way that to execute without necessarily having all the money in place to get it done, basically.
Wow. Wow, that's
Yeah.
that's a strong woman right there. Like that's really like when I hear things like that, like I can see a lot of parallels also, even with my own mom as well. And sometimes I think about the fact that, I mean, they did not have the opportunity to be formally educated, but I feel
Yeah.
that they were educated in other ways because it takes an educated mind to say that, look, I don't have this, but I want my child to have it, right? It's a form of education, right? It's not formal, but it's amazing. It's
Exactly.
really amazing.
And I think that this goes also for a lot of the women in Africa. I mean, I can say this also about my wife, for example. I
Mm,
mean,
mm,
the same, I see similar, patterns when we want to carry out a project, the way she comes with the knowledge
mm.
and and how to organize things in general. I think there's some other form of education we haven't looked at.
Yes, yes. No, no, I completely agree. I agree. Like I feel that yes, formalized education is important, but we shouldn't do formalized education at the expense of the informal education, because, like, in fact, maybe I'll pick your brain on this. Just was it yesterday? My wife and I were watching YouTube video, and there was an ad, Pepsodent charcoal, and then
Yeah.
immediately my wife said, "Oh, this is crazy," because in the olden days, she heard this from her grandmom. They're using the charcoal dust, and then they use this palm part of the palm tree or something, or banana tree.
I've
You've
used
used it
it
before?
before.
Ah, okay.
The plantain, the
Plantain, yes, plantain, yeah,
part,
exactly.
you mash,
Yeah,
put the charcoal dust in it, then
charcoal. Hmm.
it's a whitener.
Exactly. And like Bismarck. Now, look, hundreds of years later, Pepsodent says we are doing Pepsodent charcoal. And I'm saying that, look, our forefathers had this knowledge. They were doing this. Like, I remember my mom chewing steak. She used to do this, force me to even use chewing steak, right? And then, you think about it, like, there's some hidden knowledge that is dying out because we have neglected, like, our traditional knowledge. It's not being passed on, and then we kind of embrace everything Western, and then at the expense of our traditions. Anyway, but I thought I'll mention this.
No,
I'll mention this to you. It's
I agree with you. So no matter your background, I think for me, moving to Europe helped me to embrace myself as I am. And it should do the same. Like I think that everyone, no matter where you come from, no matter your color, race, religion, background, you need to embrace yourself. Once you embrace yourself, you'll be able to look back into some things. When you embrace yourself, it's not like everything is beautiful and everything is perfect. There will be some ugly sides and stuff, but you embrace yourself, and then you can go back in time, look at some of these things, and then find ways to refine it to benefit all of us today. And
yeah.
that's actually feeding into my company, Diami.
Mm-hmm.
Diami, born on that. I mean, my grandmother, who passed, she lived
Oh,
until 106. Was the go-to person in the entire village. You
wow,
know,
106 years.
she lived for 106 years.
Wow.
Yes. My last memory of her, I went to the village, visited her, um, and then we took a walk, and she took one of her great grandchildren, carried her on her back, and we were walking. 106.
What?
And yeah, and her knowledge of indigenous medicine, and how it kept people alive in the village, at least until I came to Europe and got to learn of all these crazy new things happening. The people in the village depended on this, and they were alive. They stayed alive. And so at some point during my education here, I was like, well, I've seen all the trendy new things, but what's happening back home? How did my ancestors manage to live and to stay alive all these years and contribute to society? How do they manage that? And then it made me, come up with this idea, and to to develop it further, and then now I implemented like 2 years ago, and we are growing strong still.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks for coming there, because that was my next question actually, because I wanted to zoom into that, because one of the in fact, the main reason why I found your profile was because of Diami, your company, your startup, and I'll let you tell us what it meant starting that business. But the key thing for me, when I saw it, I was kind of reading the profile. I said, okay, look, I think about this, and I'm not a technical expert, but most of the medications we are developing, especially the so-called breakthrough medications, even let's take the COVID vaccines, for example, I think about them like, okay, were the Africans, genome, factored in, or did we? No, I think about that. And again, I'm not a technical expert. It's one of those things that I think about. I just okay, and because I'm in the pharmaceuticals supply chain space, I think about this because when you are doing clinical trials, for example, at least from what I've seen so far, I don't see any Africans in the major ones, right? And I'm like, okay, so yes, it ultimately the intention is to help human race, but my question here is, how important is it for us to understand, first of all, like genomics in nature, right? Like, what is it in the first place, and how important is it in kind of developing medications that are tailor-made to addressing specific ailments of Africans? I know it's a big question, but yeah.
It's a big question. This is but it's a very important question. I think before I come to that, I will say that if it doesn't make financial sense to the people who have the power and the resources to develop the medicines, if it doesn't make financial sense to them to factor in the African side or whoever, or South American or Asian side, then they won't do it.
Yeah.
Then it will be up to us. But at the end of the day, they could develop the medicine today. Africa couldn't be in that financial factor, but a couple of years down, they want to sell it in Africa.
Yep.
And we will buy it anyway. You know, but research from many years has shown that the medicines don't act the same way on everybody.
Yeah.
Because we are genetically different. There are subtle variations. We are slightly different. So you might give medication at a certain dose to someone at a certain point, even medical devices, yeah, just to record what you call a blood pressure. And you put it there. Just because of the barrier, the color of the skin, for some devices, it doesn't work that way.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and some physicians have seen this, you know. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's important to also bring in the African factor. When it comes to genomics, I mean, maybe for the sake of our audience, when we say genomics or genetics or DNA, all we are referring to for the purpose of this conversation is the set of instructions that tells the basic blocks of your body.
Okay.
How to behave, the set of instructions.
Okay.
And those set of instructions have more variability. There's more variation when it comes to people from Africa.
Okay.
When it comes to antihypertensive drugs or anti-obesity drugs, research has shown that people of African ancestry, because of the way the instructions vary, respond differently.
Oh, wow.
But realize the case, I mean, we are not the ones developing the medicines. We don't have the power, and those developing the medicines must do it on purely financial reasons, and this is why we must step in, you know, because I mean, if you look at the projection of population, you know, the demographics, we are increasing in population in Africa. There's going to be more problems, disease problems coming up, and this is the time to, instead of looking forward, looking at what technology has brought us today, rather go back to what worked for our ancestors and let it go through the technology of today and see how useful it is for us today.
No, this is I'm learning so much. Wow. So it means that the body, like you mentioned, the body kind of has a set of instructions, and this set of instructions let's say would make the body react differently with different kind of medication or any foreign material in your body, right? So you can have, let's say, a medication that gives this particular side effect to a particular race, but it will not give that same side effect to a particular. Is that possible? Am I understanding it correctly?
Exactly why we have this personalized medicine. today.
Mm, mm,
Gaining traction, right? Personalized medicine, because even in the Western world or other places, even amongst people who have a much more closer set of genetic information, right?
mm-hmm,
There are subtle variation, and this is why this precision medicine, personalized medicine comes up.
mm,
This is the top, most advanced level of medicine. But
mm,
what Diami is looking at is basic thing, developing medicines that's most suited to the genetic genomic background
mm,
of Africans. And
mm-hmm.
how that is very simple. The plants we've always used, we develop medicines from them, because those plants, those compounds, those biomaterials have gone through generations of testing. That was not done
Mm-hmm.
in a sterile laboratory. It was done in an actual real life situation for
It's like
many.
a clinical trial, like a mass clinical trial.
I think that there's a massive clinical trial going on today in Africa, and no one is collecting the information, because you have, in Ghana alone, you have 70% of the people relying on traditional African medicine for
Mm-hmm.
primary care.
Wow.
These are not my figures. These are the figures of the World Health Organization. So you have
Wow.
the doctor-patient ratio in Ghana, for example, is 1:200,000 at the last survey.
Wow.
Doctor to traditional practitioner ratio is 1:20. That's a massive problem.
Oh.
This is why, at the moment, what the kind of projects I'm involved in are precision medicine, big genomic stuff. But I think the biggest problem is back home, where you have that kind of figures, and where my brain is needed. Yeah, this is why
Mm.
I went into
Yeah.
this dynamic project.
This awesome. So, like, can you tell me, right, at what point did the idea for Dianyame come into play, right? Because I know with your insight and your knowledge, you've always had this maybe lingering in your mind. But what was that moment, that turning point? You said, look, I need to start Dianyame to address. And once you tell us how you started this, can you tell me, what the primary mission of Dianyame is, where you are currently, right, and what's next? What is next for Dianyame?
Thank you. So, honestly, the idea for Dianyame came up when I moved to Germany and started
Okay.
my master's degree in molecular medicine. I was looking at different disease problems, going through 20 different laboratories and seeing the medications that are used for particular stuff and all of that. And I must say that I think I had it coming, but I didn't, because of my background. My grandmother was a herbalist, treating people in Rwanda.
Oh.
Everybody relied on her knowledge to save them. My grandmother actually delivered me as a baby, I wasn't on.
Oh.
Yeah, my mother sold herbal medicine to keep us in school. I use
Wow.
herbal medicine myself, different types.
Wow.
In fact, I know some. There are some that I still use here.
Wow.
This is what I know, so this is what I use. And so when I started seeing all the latest fancy things here, I started questioning, so what were we doing all this while in Africa? And this is when the idea of Dianyame started coming up, and I started develop. So I developed for close to 5 years. Yeah,
Oh,
developing.
wow.
Yeah, I incubated it for like 5 years, looking
Wow.
at and recording everything, the kind of things that I have to do, planning everything. And then finally, after my PhD, I took a quick break and then started the execution process. So what Dianyame is trying to do, or what it's not, we are not trying, we are doing it at the moment, is we take indigenous knowledge of medicine,
Okay.
apply modern technology to it, because that's a gap. The gap is that we've not tested it. So sometimes something could be a placebo, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so we take indigenous knowledge of medicine, apply modern technology to it, and then bring out the medicine that is uh, uh, um, that we need, in Africa. So basically, if we bring a formulation that was used many generations, and we are able to come up with a natural compound that is active in there, it's more likely to work for us. And also, this is just in theory now, but also if it's working for people with a varied genomic background, it will work for the rest of the world.
The rest of the world, yeah.
Yes. So the long-term plan is to actually come up with compounds that will work for all of us in the world. But we want to see what the Africans said, and we want to develop
Okay.
properly. Yeah.
Oh wow. I mean, this is amazing because like looking at what you're trying to do, I remember growing up, whenever I had malaria or high fever, my mom would there's this I think neem tree, right? She'll boil this neem tree, sometimes they'll put some pineapple peel, things like they'll boil some wild thing, and surprisingly it always worked. Like I don't know the medical or technical reason why it worked, but it always worked for some reason. So imagine, like you said, imagine you pick that knowledge and then like you take it through technology, or lab testing or whatever it is, and refine it. Some of them need refining, some of them need, and then you come up with compounds or very concrete solutions, right? I mean, I'm looking at a huge, I mean, if you look at even Ghana alone, like you said, the amount of knowledge, I like, for example, when an elderly person in the village passes on, like a grandmother, imagine the tacit knowledge that this woman had for over 100 years. She had worked, like you said, as a herbalist, and all that knowledge. The question is, if she hadn't, for example, passed it on to your mom, it means that she goes with it.
Yes.
So I think what you're doing is not even just about coming up with medicine, but also kind of preserving this indigenous knowledge, because you document the processes, you take it through scientific methods and stuff like that. So although you're coming up with refined solutions, I feel that you're also preserving our cultural heritage. So it's a very huge thing you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So in Ghana, for example, a long time back, we we um, we actually noticed this and set up the Center for Plant Medicine Research, right? Which is doing well in this aspect, but not doing so well when it comes to bringing it to the rest of the world and commercialization. And in my recent visit to Ghana, I met them and yeah, and other stakeholders in this aspect, looking at how we can bring this to the rest of the world. Also see, I'm not just interested in what Diami is doing, but also seeing what other people have at home and how we can improve it and bring it to the rest of the world.
I really like the vision of Diami. And like, for example, one of the major stumbling blocks to the study of genomics in general, at least from the little reading I've done, is financial, like capital, right? Because you need these, we are looking at really capital and labor intensive. So number one is the technical expertise is not in the numbers in Ghana or in most African countries, right? People like you, there are not many of people who have this exposure and knowledge. That's number one. Number two is the fact that the facilities, right? Are there enough laboratories with the right, machinery, the right microscopes and whatever it is to perform, the iterations that are needed. So my question would be to you is that with the exposure you've had, like, how do you think we can mitigate against these two major problems, the capital, facilities, and then the technical expertise? Like, what can we do? Like, maybe starting with Ghana, right? What can Ghana do, right, to have these three in place to ensure that the work that Diami is, for example, doing can be done even locally, right? If there are labs here, if there's capital investment into Diami, for example, I'm sure you'll be able to employ more technicians and stuff like that and scale, right? What do you think is a solution, potential solution?
I'll come up with two solutions. One is technical, one is more general. The technical one is about getting, when it comes to Ghana, getting equipment into Ghana, if you're a startup and you want to produce from Ghana and you want to take equipment into Ghana, the kind of taxes you pay on it, everything would literally cripple you. By the time you get those equipment into Ghana, you can't function anymore. If you even want to take free medical equipment, to donate, you'll pay taxes on.
Yeah.
I think that's just one example, but those are some of the barriers that must be lifted. The other aspect of it is, I'll give you an example. You have funding agencies that will fly people all the way from Boston or from Germany to Ghana to train people or to give a workshop in bioinformatics analysis.
Okay.
And then those people will send samples to Europe or Boston to analyze them. It doesn't make financial sense long term. It's better you train people who can train the locals in Ghana, in other aspects, in other parts of Africa. That's why I'm so impressed by what's happening in South Africa. When COVID struck, it took a South African scientist, Professor 𝗕𝗂𝘃 whom I've had the honor of meeting.
Oh, wow.
To discover that there's a different variant, that popped up in South Africa. And then, being a true scientist and very honest, he brought it out. And guess what? Everybody said, well, no one can travel to and from South Africa. There's a ban, whatever. Yeah. And he was
wow
about this because as a scientist, he must bring it out. But that does not mean that the South Africans can travel,
okay.
Yeah. And it was important that he was there at that time to see that no one came from the UK.
Yeah,
because there was COVID. How are you traveling to South Africa? He was patient and did it, and today he's doing massive work in the direction of surveillance, disease surveillance, preventing possible future pandemics, and I find that very interesting. And that's where money and effort and policy must support across Africa, I would say.
Wow. I during the COVID, I really thought about this. I'm like, you see, in times of emergency, it's like everyone for themselves, right? Because the US is trying to find vaccines or whatever it is that will work. They'll first look at what is going to work for their people. And when there's surplus, that's when we Africa, like most of the vaccines we received were donated, right? And some arrangements. And I'm like, okay, so they would have to, every country would fend for themselves first. And this is why the work you do with Diami and the research you've been doing, it's crucial that we build our own solution centers, right? Our own labs, build our own human capital, technical capabilities, and so forth, so that you never know when an emergency or a next COVID wave will happen. If it happens, then it means that then we are prepared locally to identify the solutions that work for us first, before we try to propagate. And when I look at, let's say, the next, I think about the next generation, right? So now the work you're doing with Diami, for example, the only way I feel that you can scale to create an impact for the next generation would be to really have some support. For me, I think financial support at this stage is crucial. So apart from, I've seen that you got a few grants here and there, but how are you funding this? And how is there a way for, let's say, if someone is watching, if they want to support you, or in whatever way possible, is there a way people can reach you or the Diami team? I know that there are people who watch you, like you say, oh yeah, I want to give something to support. Is there something like that? Are you open to this?
I'm open to that. Thank you for that. So the Diami project is something I've taken personal from day one. It's something very personal to me. So I'm investing personally. Convinced everyone around me to invest into it.
Yeah.
We are proudly supported by the Gesellschaft für Internationales Zusammenarbeit, which is the German Department for International Cooperation, and under the auspices of the Ministry of Economy of Germany. We
Okay.
funding from there. We are in talks with a couple of entities in Ghana for support as well, more not financially, but more collaborative work.
Okay.
But at the moment, finances are the main thing we really need to get our first product to the market.
Yeah.
We will need some finance, and we are open to that. You can feel free to contact us, and yeah.
Yeah. No, that's it's I thought to chip in there. So now we've talked about the bottlenecks and everything, but like can you maybe throw some light on what are the key benefits of understanding the African genomics? Like you said, of course we can create tailor-made medications and stuff, but beyond that, what do you see is, let's say, the key benefits of doing this? Like if let's say government of Ghana say, okay, look, we are going to set up a center for Africa genomics or something, and we want Diami to be the company that would run this, right? What would be the benefit to society, like to the ordinary person who is watching this? How do they know it's going to be beneficial?
First benefits, we will have medicines that work better for us, that are adapted to our system, for sure. I've looked at a couple of clinical trials. I'm in the space, so I see what's happening. We will get medicines that work for us, perhaps even cheaper, perhaps develop them faster. You have 70-80% of clinical trials that fail because of the approach of drug and receptor. You have a lock and key. In nature, that isn't the case. That just isn't the case,
Mm.
or you have to take a more global approach when you are dealing with disease. And I think that when we look into our genomics, and not just when we talk about the genomics, not just us, but also the species that we've used.
Oh, okay.
At this point, you have to remember that we have the issue of climate. The climate, what do you call it? Climate change.
Yes.
It's impacting species that we've used for many generations. In addition to
Oh.
that, you have close to 1 billion people, 900 million Africans developing on depend on traditional African medicine for healthcare. That puts a lot of pressure on resource. So everyone is going into nature, picking up this stuff and then depleting them. So we will need to study about these species, and know how to either cultivate them, know how to preserve them. And this is one of the things I'm proud of when it comes to the African Biogenome project, which is trying
Okay.
to sequence 100,000 genomes from different species, just biogenome. So no human, non-human, but basically the biodiversity in Africa,
Oh, wow.
to better understand how we can preserve them, grow these medicinal species instead of going to the wild for them and all of that. So at the end of the day, I think that genomics, both from the human aspect and from the biodiversity aspect, will help us to develop medicines that are more suited to Africans, first of all, but in the long run will impact the rest of the world. Because now I will just go a bit off. So
Yeah.
currently, we all always, whenever we mention Africa, we look at infectious disease, right? But our main disease burden is shifting. We are going more towards non-communicable, non-infectious diseases,
Mm.
hypertension, and all of these things, right? And this is where we can tap into the rich resource of our past. You can have a medication that was used for something else, but based on the way you collect information on it, you could develop it into a different medication, you know?
Okay.
Yes, like artemisinin was for something else, came from a different
Oh.
plant and it was for something else. And then we were able to find out, it could cure malaria. And
Oh,
today,
wow.
I mean, it's the best working anti-malarial.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's one example. So, and imagine the trove, the treasure trove we have in Ghana and across Africa to learn about the species. I mean, we basically all humanity came from there, and everything there is mostly, wild. We could learn from
Wow.
there, create medicines that fit for the population in Africa, but also for the rest of the world in the long run.
No, that's a very important. I mean, I didn't think about the biodiversity bit, but like it's really really important. It's really important. Yeah. I would. We have just 4 minutes left. So what I would do, is that I'll see if there are any comments or questions, and then I'll bring them on the screen, and then we can read together. So we have a few people. Stanley Smith Aqua says, my brother right there. So you know him, right? Echo.
Yes, yeah, Stanley is my brother. We almost met when
Oh, almost.
I owe you one, brother. We will meet.
Yeah, so he's commenting, he's watching us from LinkedIn. He sent another comment. He says, great work, Bismark and Prince. Okay, thanks, Stanley. I also have another, is it Lily Kulu? I hope I pronounced it well.
That's my wife.
Oh, no wonder I saw the smile when the name popped up. I saw a very unique smile.
Yeah, she's also in this field, actually. She's a neuroscientist.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Okay, thanks, Mrs. for tuning in. As she says, I'm so inspired by Dr. Appiah. What a brilliant mind. Oh. Oh, that's really that's it. That's it. And she's watching from YouTube. So thanks for tuning in. We also have Dennis. Dennis, also a champion from Facebook. He says, hi, Prince and Dr. Bismark. I'm really enjoying your show. I'm a medical laboratory technician and I would love to work with your firm voluntarily here in Ghana.
Happy to connect with you, Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find a way to make that happen, right?
Yeah. I would go to the comments after the call and I'll send you his profile and then you can connect with him. Yeah. So that's awesome. Thanks, Dennis. I mean, the fact that you want to volunteer for Diami's project and just to support, because I mean I think about, just for us to wrap up, I'm thinking about the fact that the numbers are staggering. Like you mentioned about the patient to herbal practitioner and the patient to doctor. The numbers are staggering. Like there's a huge. We are looking at like billions of dollars in terms of monetary aspect, like an untapped market.
Yes.
But for some reason, the funding is not coming to support projects like yours. Like it's really baffling. Like that's.
What really sets Diami apart from all other pharma herbal companies in Africa is that we are actually into data analytics. We provide a platform for the patients, the users, to have some report about how the medicine impact them.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes. And that's also a platform to collect more information about the African medicinal formulation, and then based on this, we will then analyze it further using current tools like machine learning based tools, uh, stuff that I use now to basically narrow down on specific compounds or combinations of compounds that we can develop further into medicines for other ailments, basically.
Wow, that's like really. I'd like to say, I mean, Dr. Appiah, Bismark, however you want me to call you, but I want to say that I'm really inspired, by this, because normally, many ideas that are, we hear normally are the same ideas that are being recycled, like fintech, but like what you're doing, for me, I think it's novel, it's new, it's fresh, it's untapped, right? In fact, even across the world, it's not even common. How much more like an African, champions, such a move. And we are looking at a solution that, Diami is coming up with, or the drugs and compounds you're going to come up with will have, transgenerational impact. So you're not even just doing it, just for our generation, but we are looking at solutions that will transcend, all of us. So I really believe in the vision. And to wrap up the conversation, is there any final words you would want, the viewers and listeners to either know about you, know about Diami, or how can they reach out to you in case you have more volunteers coming, for example, any final words, and then we can wrap up.
I think the final words is, first of all, thank you very much, Prince. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I'm happy to get in. I love connecting with people. So if anybody got inspired by what Diami is doing and wants to get in touch, we are happy to talk to you, to see how how we can hold hands and make this project happen.
Yeah, I believe in your vision. To be very sincere with you, I believe in that. And I know in a few years' time, when we have a part 2 of this conversation, you'll be like, Diami will be like, yeah, this is. Yeah, exactly. You can say, yeah, we have 100,000 compounds, we have like 15,000 products, So it will happen. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's episode of People Who Inspire. I always look forward to the weekends after, usually a busy week, but for those of you who tune in, I truly appreciate it. And thank you, Dr. Appiah, for really making time. And I know you're a busy person, you're traveling and all that. I really appreciate your time as well. And hopefully next week, I'll come your way with another episode of People Who Inspire. Stay inspired and keep pursuing your dreams. Someday we'll meet at the top if we aren't already there. Thank you, everyone. And bye-bye.
Enjoy your weekends, guys. Bye.